The trial begins. The girl's fingers trembled as courtroom lights flickered across scaled skin beside her. Some called Ross's 7 the jewel of the Corewood Sectors, a planet where 7 species had built the Galactic Judiciary headquarters as neutral ground. But 8-year-old Meera Voss had never imagined she'd stand at its center, much less as the defendant in case GJ-29834, the Unified Planetary Alliance versus Meera Voss, an unregistered biological entity. Meera didn't understand most of the words the adults used, but she knew what they meant. They wanted to take Pix away from her. The small dragon shifted nervously at her side, his azure scales catching the amber glow of antique lighting fixtures. Pix's tail curled protectively around Meera's ankle as his wings folded tighter against his back. Only 3 months ago, they'd been playing hide-and-seek in the abandoned ducts of Research Station Epsilon. Now they faced imprisonment, or worse. The Honorable Justice Thaculo presiding, announced the bailiff, a tall Praxian with skin the color of oxidized copper. The courtroom fell silent as the judge entered. Justice Thaculo's green complexion appeared almost luminous against his black robes. His elongated fingers gripped the polished wooden armrests of his chair as he settled behind the bench, eyes glittering with an intelligence that had adjudicated 583 interspecies disputes over 27 standard years. These proceedings will commence, he intoned, his voice resonating through the chamber designed for perfect acoustics. Prosecution may present opening statements. The prosecutor, a human woman named Director Elise Winters, rose from her seat. Her gray suit matched the steel in her eyes, and her hair was pulled back so severely it appeared to physically hurt. Your Honor, members of the Galactic Judiciary, we stand at a precipice of security concern. The child before you has violated Statute 39 of the Interspecies Contact Protocol by harboring an unregistered draconic entity. Meera flinched at the word entity. Pix wasn't an entity, he was her friend. More disturbing, Winters continued, is the pattern this represents. The draconic species has a documented history of destruction across 9 systems. Their biology contains adaptive genetic sequences that can be weaponized. Their fire glands can reach temperatures that melt durasteel. Allowing unauthorized contact between humans and draconics presents a clear and present danger to galactic security. Meera's appointed defender, a Solarian named Prism whose translucent skin revealed the pulsing of 3 hearts, stood up. Your Honor, may I remind the court that my client is a child, not a biological weapons engineer. This case represents an overreach of regulatory authority into basic rights of companionship recognized across. Save your arguments for your own statement, defender, Justice Thaculo interrupted. Director Winters, continue. We will demonstrate that despite her age, Defendant Voss knowingly concealed the draconic, interfered with security protocols, and potentially compromised classified research. We seek immediate confiscation of the entity for study and rehabilitative detention for the minor. Meera's stomach twisted into knots. Study meant laboratories, and she knew enough about those from her parents' work to understand what happened there. Pix sensed her distress and made a soft trilling sound that always calmed her, but now drew glares from the security personnel. Silence the creature, ordered Justice Thaculo. No unauthorized vocalizations. As the prosecutor returned to her seat, Defender Prism took position at the podium. The Solarian's voice shifted through harmonic registers, a biological feature of their species. This court faces not a question of security, but one of understanding. My client discovered an injured hatchling, nursed it to health, and formed a bond that predates humanity's written history. Draconic entities, draconic individuals, were partners to 17 civilizations before humans achieved space travel. Objection, Winters called immediately. Irrelevant historical speculation. Sustained, said Justice Thaculo. Restrict your statements to the case at hand. Prism nodded, the movement causing ripples through their semi-transparent tissues. We will demonstrate that no laws were broken, no security compromised, and that the separation of Meera Voss from her companion would constitute cruel treatment under Statute 12 of the Minor Protection Accords. The small data recorder on Meera's necklace felt heavy against her chest. Her mother had given it to her on her 7th birthday, to collect your own scientific observations, just like Mom and Dad. She hadn't told anyone that she'd been recording everything since the day she found pics. Not even Defender Prism knew what was stored inside. The real battle was about to begin. The witnesses. First witness, called Justice Thaculo. Director Winters summoned Dr. Farron, head of xenobiology at Research Station Epsilon. The balding man with perpetually chapped lips had never smiled at Meera during the 14 months her parents were stationed there. He took the stand, swore on the Galactic Charter, and recounted the station's breach. We detected unauthorized access to the biohazard disposal system. Investigation revealed the miner had repurposed an abandoned maintenance shaft as a dwelling for the draconic specimen. When security attempted to contain the creature, it displayed defensive fire capabilities. Did anyone sustain injuries? Asked Winters. Thankfully, no. But the creature scorched a 23-centimeter hole through reinforced plating. If it had been directed at personnel. Meera wanted to scream. Pix had only breathed fire because Security Officer Tan had tried to catch him with electron nets, and the hole had been through an old packing crate, not station infrastructure. But children weren't allowed to interrupt adults, especially not in court. The questioning continued with 3 more witnesses, the security chief, a xenopsychologist who had never actually met Pix, and a policy expert who cited 73 regulations Meera had supposedly violated. When her turn came to testify, Meera approached the witness stand with small, careful steps. Her blue dress, the only formal clothing she owned, felt too big, making her look even smaller than her 8 years. State your name for the record, instructed the court clerk. Meera Elena Voss. Her voice barely carried across the massive chamber. Director Winters stood up, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Miss Voss, did you knowingly violate station protocols by harboring an unregistered alien species? Meera looked at Pix, who sat perfectly still despite the guards flanking him. I found him hurt. He was bleeding and scared. That's not what I asked. Did you know it was against the rules? I knew I wasn't supposed to have pets. But Pix isn't a pet. What is he then? He's my friend. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Director Winters stepped closer. Friends don't endanger each other, Miss Voss. Your friend could have killed someone with his fire. He only used fire to protect himself. Officer Tan was hurting him with those nets. The electricity was making him cry. You seem to know a lot about this creature's emotional states. How long were you hiding him? Meera's hand moved unconsciously to the data recorder around her neck. 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. And during that time, did you feed him? Yes. With what? Food scraps from the cafeteria. Sometimes I gave him my dessert. So you stole food to feed an unregistered alien? I shared my food. Meera's voice cracked. That's what friends do. Director Winters smiled coldly. No further questions. Defender Prism approached with gentle steps. Meera, can you tell us how you found Pix? I was exploring the maintenance tunnels during rest period. I heard crying, not human crying, but sad sounds. He was trapped under some fallen pipes, and there was green blood everywhere. One of his wings was bent wrong. What did you do? I moved the pipes and wrapped his wing with my sweater. Then I carried him to the old storage room where nobody goes. I made him a nest with blankets from the recycling bin. How did you know how to help him? Mom and Dad study xenobiology. I've watched them treat injured creatures before. I knew to keep him warm and give him water. When did you realize he was intelligent? Meera's eyes lit up. The second day. He started copying sounds I made. By the end of the first week, he understood basic words. He's really smart, smarter than the station's computer sometimes. Pix made a soft chirping sound at the compliment, drawing another stern look from Justice Thaculo. Did he ever threaten you or anyone else before the security incident? Never. He's gentle and funny. He likes to play games and help me with my studies. He even learned to write some letters by watching me do homework. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The idea of a draconic learning human writing seemed to surprise many of the observers. "Thank you, Meera," said Prism softly. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of the defendant's character and the nature of her relationship with the draconic individual." "Proceed," Justice Thakulo replied, though his expression suggested skepticism. But Meera knew the real evidence was still hidden around her neck, waiting for the right moment to change everything. The hidden truth. Defender Prism presented character witnesses, Meera's teachers, who testified about her kindness to younger children, the station's maintenance chief, who spoke of her curiosity and helpfulness, even the cafeteria supervisor, who mentioned how Meera always said, "please," and "thank you," in 3 different languages. But Director Winters systematically dismantled each testimony, focusing on protocol violations and security risks. The weight of galactic law seemed insurmountable against the simple bond between a girl and her dragon friend. "Your Honor," Winters said during her closing argument, "sentiment cannot override security. The defendant may be young, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. The draconic species represents an unacceptable risk, and unauthorized contact must be punished to prevent future incidents." When Prism stood for the defense's closing, their trivocal harmonics rang with passion. "This case will define us as a galactic community. Are we beings who value connection and understanding, or are we ruled by fear of the unknown?" Meera Voss saw past species barriers to recognize intelligence, emotion, and friendship. She represents the best of what any species can be. Justice Thakulo deliberated for what felt like hours but was only 17 minutes. When he returned, his expression was grave. "This court finds the defendant guilty of violating Statute 39 of the Interspecies Contact Protocol. The draconic entity will be remanded to the Xenobiological Research Division for study. The minor will be placed in rehabilitative custody for—" "Wait." Meera jumped up, her small voice somehow carrying across the entire chamber. "I have evidence." Security moved to restrain her, but Justice Thakulo raised a hand. "Evidence should have been presented during testimony, young defendant." "I was scared," Meera said, tears streaming down her face. "But Pix isn't dangerous. I can prove it." She pulled the data recorder from around her neck. "I recorded everything from the day I found him. Every moment, every conversation, every game we played. You can see who he really is." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Director Winters objected, but Justice Thakulo was intrigued. Approached the bench, both counselors. After a hushed conference, the judge announced, "The court will review this evidence. Court is adjourned until tomorrow." That night, in her holding cell, Meera curled up on the narrow bed and whispered to Pix through the reinforced wall separating them. "I'm sorry I got you in trouble." A soft trill came back, followed by a sound she'd never heard before, Pix attempting human speech. "Me, R.A. No. Soar, R.Y. Her heart soared. Even now, he was trying to comfort her. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the mysterious evidence, and beings from across the sector had come to witness the outcome. Justice Thakulo took his seat, and the main viewing screen descended from the ceiling. "The court has reviewed the submitted recordings. We will now view selected portions." The screen came alive with Meera's shaky recording of that first day, a tiny dragon whimpering under debris, wing twisted at an unnatural angle. The courtroom watched in silence as 8-year-old Meera carefully freed him, speaking in soothing tones. "It's okay, little one. I won't hurt you. Let me help." The recording jumped forward, Pix drinking water from Meera's cupped hands, his eyes watching her with obvious intelligence and growing trust. Then came the games, Pix learning to stack blocks, copying human words, even attempting to draw letters with his claws. But the most powerful moment came from a recording 3 weeks in. Meera had been crying over a failed test, and Pix had wrapped his small wings around her shoulders while making comforting sounds. Then, clear as day, came his first word, friend. The courtroom was completely silent. The recordings continued, hours of companionship, learning, and genuine affection between two beings who had found solace in each other. Pix helping Meera with her homework by pointing to correct answers with his tail. Meera reading him stories, teaching him songs, showing him pictures of earth and dragons from human mythology. In one particularly touching scene, Meera asked, "Do you miss your family, Pix?" The young dragon had replied in his broken but earnest voice, "You, family, now." When the recordings ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, not even among the Praxians, who communicated primarily through scent and rarely showed emotion. Justice Thaculo spoke slowly, carefully. "In my 27 years on this bench, I have never seen evidence that so thoroughly contradicts initial assumptions. The recordings demonstrate not a security threat, but a remarkable example of interspecies understanding and mutual care." Director Winters stood desperately. "Your Honor, emotional manipulation cannot override legal statute." "Counselor," the judge interrupted, "what we have witnessed is not manipulation. It is documentation of a relationship that challenges our fundamental understanding of intelligence, companionship, and the very laws designed to keep our species separate." The moment of truth had arrived. The verdict. Justice Thaculo stood, his towering frame commanding absolute attention. "Before I render final judgment, I will hear directly from the draconic individual." The courtroom gasped. In the history of galactic jurisprudence, no non-registered species had ever been permitted to testify. "Your Honor," Director Winters protested, "the creature has no legal standing." "Counselor," Thaculo's voice cut like steel, "the evidence suggests this creature possesses intelligence equal to or exceeding many registered species." "I will hear what he has to say." Guards escorted Pix to a specially modified witness stand. The small dragon's azure scales shimmered under the courtroom lights as he looked up at the towering judge. Despite his size, barely reaching Meera's shoulder, his posture radiated dignity. "State your designation," the court clerk instructed uncertainly. Pix's voice, still young but growing stronger, carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I am Pix. Friend to Meera Voss. How do you understand these proceedings?" Justice Thaculo asked. "You decide, if I go away. If Meera gets punished. For being kind to me. And what is your relationship to the defendant?" Pix turned to look at Meera, his golden eyes warm with affection. "She is my rescuer. My teacher. My family. I would protect her with my life." "Were you aware that your presence violated station protocols?" "No, understand protocols when hurt. Only understand pain. Fear. Then, warmth. Safety. Love." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Meera, show me what it means to trust." Director Winters couldn't contain herself. "Your Honor, this is theater. The creature has been coached." "The witness will continue," Thaculo commanded. "Pix, do you understand the charges against you and Miss Voss? They say I am dangerous. That friendship is illegal. But how can love be wrong?" Pix's wings spread slightly, not in aggression but in a gesture Meera recognized as his way of expressing confusion. "My species, your records say, we destroy. But I only want to learn. To grow. To be worthy of trust given. What would you say to those who fear your kind?" Pix was quiet for a long moment, his young mind wrestling with concepts beyond his months of life. Fear comes from not knowing. Meera was afraid first time. But she chose kindness over fear. She teach me your languages, your customs, your hope for tomorrow. If I am dangerous, it is only because I would fight to protect those who show such courage. The courtroom was spellbound. Here was a being, supposedly savage and destructive, speaking of love, loyalty, and the transformative power of compassion. "Thank you," Justice Thakulo said softly. "Return to your guardian." As Pix walked back to Meera's side, his tail curled protectively around her ankle once more. She reached down and gently stroked his head, whispering, "You did perfect." Justice Thakulo remained standing, his expression thoughtful. "This court will now render judgment. But first, I must address a fundamental question raised by these proceedings: what defines a person versus a creature? Intelligence? Emotion? The capacity for growth and moral reasoning? By any measure we apply to our registered species, the draconic individual before us meets or exceeds those standards." He paused, letting his words sink in. Furthermore, the defendant Meera Voss demonstrated remarkable courage, compassion, and wisdom. Rather than following protocols born from ancient fears, she chose to see beyond species barriers to recognize a being in need. Her actions represent the highest ideals of galactic civilization. Director Winters sat rigidly, her face pale as she realized where this judgment was heading. However, the judge continued, "This court cannot simply ignore existing laws. The interspecies contact protocol exists for valid historical reasons. But laws that prevent understanding and compassion must be examined, challenged, and when necessary, changed." He raised his ceremonial gavel. "Therefore, this court finds the defendant Meera Voss not guilty of endangering galactic security. Her actions, while technically violating protocol, were morally justified and ultimately beneficial to interspecies relations." The courtroom erupted in cheers, but Justice Thakulo wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I hereby grant emergency personhood status to the draconic individual known as Pix, with all rights and protections afforded to sentient beings under galactic law. This case will be forwarded to the Interspecies Council with a recommendation to review and revise contact protocols to prevent similar injustices." Meera threw her arms around Pix as tears of joy streamed down her face. Around them, beings from 7 different species applauded, a sound that transcended language barriers. But the real victory was yet to come. A new beginning. 6 months after the trial that had captivated the galaxy, Meera sat in the observation deck of the newly established Interspecies Friendship Institute on Ross's 7. Pix, now grown to the size of a large dog but still her constant companion, worked beside her on a translation project. The institute had been Justice Thakulo's idea, a place where beings from different species could meet, learn, and form the kinds of bonds that had been illegal just months before. Meera's parents had accepted positions as lead researchers, specializing in interspecies communication and emotional development. "How's the Praxian grammar coming along?" asked Dr. Elena Voss, Meera's mother, as she entered the observation deck carrying 3 cups of hot chocolate and a bowl of the crystallized fruits Pix had developed a fondness for. "It's tricky," Meera admitted, showing her notes. "But Pix is actually better at the scent markers than I am. His sense of smell is incredibly precise." Pix looked up from his own tablet, a specially designed model that responded to claw touches. "The emotional undertones are fascinating," he said, his speech now fluent though he still occasionally paused to find the right words. "Each scent carries multiple layers of meaning." Dr. Voss smiled at the pair. The transformation in both of them over the past months had been remarkable. Meera had grown more confident and curious, while Pix had blossomed intellectually, mastering 4 languages and showing aptitude for mathematics that impressed even the Institute's adult scholars. "Speaking of communication," Dr. Voss said, "you have visitors." Through the observation deck's transparent walls, Meera could see a shuttle approaching the Institute's landing pad. As it touched down, 3 figures emerged, 2 adults and a small form that made Pix suddenly alert with excitement. "Is that?" Meera began. "Another draconic," Pix whispered, his wings fluttering with barely contained joy. "I can sense family bonds." The visiting party was escorted to the Institute by Director Prism, who had left their legal